Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Product and Development Officer, Nutanix, Sunil Potti.
At least this guy got it right, but Sudesh, I've known him for 3 years. He still doesn't know how to pronounce my last name. It's like my son, he's like 12 now, when he was 9. I know I told this joke a couple of times for a smaller audience. He was sitting in the back of my seat and my car, and he goes, "Dad, I love you. We do lots of good stuff, and I love Indian food and all that, but why do you have to name me after a toilet?" So Sudesh, thank you for reminding me about that joke. So onto a mystery. I guess this definitely hybrid cloud is a mystery as much as it sounds like everybody has an answer. So if you want to ever learn about Nutanix product roadmap, read Dilbert, okay? So one thing, this is what I joke to my team and our partners and so forth is, people talk about the hybrid cloud, but the term hybrid cloud itself is a little bit of an oxymoron, right? Because the only cloud today that truly exists is the public cloud. Everybody knows that's real, it's there, it's mainstream. And how can you actually talk about a hybrid cloud before first, actually building another cloud? We're trying to call it the private cloud or whatever you want to call it. And once you actually do a genuine job of the private cloud, only then can you actually embark on building a hybrid cloud. And most of the, if I can call it, vendors out there, including us and so forth, I think what we have to keep ourselves honest is that before we jump fast into hybrid cloud, let's make sure that we first do a good job of the private cloud, and then expand it beyond that to actually make sure that hybridity works. So Nutanix as a company, we have this thesis that, look, use the right cloud for the right workload. If it's a predictable workload, focus on doing it inside, because that's what things will work out over the long term. When we come to Washington, D.C., we stay in a hotel for 3 days, stay here for a year, we'll lease an apartment. If you stay here for 5, 6 years, we'll buy a house. It may be in Pennsylvania, but we'll buy a house. So, and if it's elastic, obviously a public cloud makes sense, right? So the key thing, though, the thing that has actually led us to where we are today, I think, to differentiate our offering from others, is the fact that when you build a private cloud, it has to be an exact replica of the public cloud. If not, you're not doing a honest job about providing that same consumer-grade experience and choice, right? So, and a lot of our achievements so far, I would say, we've come a long way from software-defined storage to hyper-converged to enterprise cloud. A lot of it is based on your own testimonials about where we have come. In fact, that particular quote, I actually got it myself while I was driving down one of the highways in North Carolina between Charlotte and Raleigh, and one of our customers actually mentioned this. And so this is the kind of thing that, independent of the terminology, this is what keeps us going inside our engineering group, is this delight that we sort of embark on from a customer-partner relationship, so that we know that we're making a difference with our technology. So today, obviously, we're going to be talking about the fact that as we have found a way to re-platform the enterprise data center to look just like Google or Amazon or Azure, it's only the starting point. It's only the starting point because we think that the era of cloud is increasingly getting dispersed, and into multi-clouds is the term that we use, not just hybrid clouds. But the starting point of that is what we call a simple core hybrid cloud. And that obviously requires a way to burn them together, fuse them together, so that as an operators, you don't know the difference between what's actually on-premise versus off-premise. And so before we kind of get into the multi-cloud architecture, something to note is the fact that this is something that we've been doing successfully across a variety of customers. And I just wanted to share with you guys for the first time our largest deployment in the world is actually more than 1,700 nodes. It's growing. It's got a great, in fact, I can't speak over the facts, but I can count the number of operators for this environment on my single hand, right, on my fingers. But the most sort of interesting thing here is the fact that it's 100% AHV. It's 100% AHV. So it's come a long way. It's come a long way. In fact, our core product has come a long way. And we're trying to take this to the next level. That's what this conference is about. That's what engineering is all about, is to constantly keep raising the bar. And so in this world of clouds that are getting dispersed, we think that the thing that architecture that's powering the public clouds and the private clouds is now expanding to layers of distribution, starting with remote offices, branch offices, hospitals, DR centers, secondary data centers, and so forth, so that they all look like smaller versions of your private and public clouds, right? So a simple example is we have this global pharmaceutical company. They started small with us across couple of data centers, but they've now essentially replatformed their global infrastructure across all their sites to essentially look like it's one single fabric operated by a single set of folks sitting in headquarters, right? And so we think that this distribution isn't going to stop there, though. It's going to obviously move closer and closer to the edge. And this edge computing cloud is not just limited to, in our opinion, things like drones or something like that. It's actually more practical. It's practical in the sense that it's about moving some intelligence onto a barge or an oil rig or even a Humvee or a forward operating base. In fact, we're going to be talking about some of those examples today, where we think that if you can truly homogenize operations, but accommodate this distribution of clouds, is where the next era of cloud is going to be, from our perspective. But before we do that, though, one of the key things that we'll have to do is this fact that, as you can see, Nutanix as a company was always about software. Even though we packaged it as turnkey appliances on day one, we worked with a variety of our partners, like Dell and Lenovo. We integrated with Amazon and Azure and so forth. And yesterday, Dheeraj talked about how we are actually taking public cloud integration to the next level, where it's just not about homogenization of operations, but the fact that we are actually going to fuse the way that we deliver enterprise apps and cloud-native apps in the Google Cloud. And I'll spend a little bit more time on that later in the keynote. But a couple of other things on the flip side, on mainstream infrastructure that we have going, is the fact that that same software that we're calling the Enterprise Cloud OS Fabric has been shipping now on Cisco for a while. Any customer that actually uses Nutanix through Supermicro or Dell essentially packages that same software and is able to consume that across the C series, the B series, the storage heavy line as a uniform fabric. And today, I'm actually quite pleased to announce the fact that we have now extended that to HP. And in the software side, I created those graphics myself. Thank you for the applause, by the way. So, it's the DL series. No surprises there. The most popular platform out there. It's the same exact stack. But I'll tell you something else that we've done, beyond just making it available in HP, in the way that we've done it on Cisco, is that as we move into this software-first strategy, the software-first form factor, software-first consumption model, the thing that we're also doing is to disrupt ourselves so that we can offer you maximum flexibility. So the software that you're able to buy on HP is transferable to Cisco, okay, or vice versa. And similarly, that flexibility will apply as we decouple our software from our hardware form factors, and we support new form factors going forward. So that tells you that we're trying to stay ahead of the disruption of going from appliances while preserving the simplicity and the turnkey capabilities of appliances, but making our fabric more ubiquitous by ensuring that the software form factor is first and foremost in the consumption model. So that's the sort of like the key takeaway there is around this concept of having a single OS across a variety of delivery vehicles. So when we come back and we look at this OS fabric and we say, okay, so what's new? So what's new? And the analogy that I have, and every product slide, every product roadmap inside Nutanix has to have a brain, by the way. If you guys have an inside joke, This is what Dheeraj used to use, the left brain, right brain. Many of you guys, like I was always confused about what is left, what is right. But the left, and I verified this last night, is obviously about logic and stuff like that. The right brain is about creativity. And the way we think about our architecture for this multi-cloud is similar, is that you actually need a single operating system that ensures that it powers a variety of architectures, but it cannot come at the expense of having a poor experience. And this is the foundational difference between us and many of our competitors, is the fact that we refuse to acknowledge that you will need 15 different products for 15 different use cases, right? And Amazon, AWS has shown us that you can actually use a single fabric across a variety of workloads, okay? It may not be everything, but it can increasingly, and every year, it keeps growing. So fundamentally, that's our core thesis of our product architecture, is the fact that you can deliver the same experience using the same operating system, irrespective of the workload. So let's delve into both these dimensions, by the way. That's where we will talk through the product roadmap. It's the fact that when we talk about one OS, it is primarily centered around the fact that it can be across any application, any deployment, and so far that's a requirement, right? Those two things. You have to support any workload, any deployment form factor, but you have to do it in an open way. And that's the last one is super hard. We'll talk more about what we're trying to do to continuously kind of stay ahead of that requirement. So when we talk about any application, let's start there for a second. And we talked about the fact that it's no longer about VDI or Oracle databases. It's all about the advent of developer-friendly applications between Mode 1 and Mode 2 applications, whether you call them that or you call them enterprise-grade or developer-friendly. When you look at what's in our capabilities that actually make it relevant for the enterprise apps, we boil it down to 3 sets of capabilities. The first one, at least in the traditional world, is about what do we do to enable quick, seamless migration? And once it's migrated, what do we do to optimize it? And third, how do we keep it on all the time without a high degree of maintenance? And so today, we've been investing in this product. It's in the underbowels of the company. It's not a sexy feature like AHV or anything like that, but it's a pretty significant investment from our side. And in fact, our own IT organization has embraced this in a big way, is that you can now essentially get a product called VM Extract, which allows you to take ESX on 3-tier environments, your traditional environments, in a very simple turnkey fashion, migrate that to AHV, okay? So that's first. And we didn't stop there. It's just not a V2V kind of tool, but it's also packaged at an application construct, where we can actually take a very complex app such as SQL Server, scan, design it, transform it, and push it into the Nutanix fabric in an optimized way. And once it's there, we can also go beyond that to optimize the way that we actually secure the data. In this particular case, instead of using hard, secure drives, expensive PKMS solutions, and so forth, in the upcoming release, we will actually support native encryption for all of our core data path. So, yeah, every one of these slides are going to have like 3-4 features in them, by the way, right? And we do have 172 sites, so that tells you how many features are going into them. So that's, there's a, preview of some of that stuff on the migration side. There's a detailed session on it. I would recommend you guys spend some quality time on VM Extract and Database Extract and some of these core data path capabilities. Now, on the performance bottleneck side, another interesting takeaway. So I won't jump into the fact that, we're doing great stuff on the core platform, which obviously we're spending a lot of time on. What we actually did for this year was, because we became so mainstream in terms of ensuring that we can benchmark against what is the old versus the new, we actually took a lot of the customer workload data and burned that into a new tool that we are calling X-Ray. X-Ray essentially is a living, breathing sort of benchmarking environment that allows you to essentially quickly assess, the the Nutanix fabric, compare it to your alternative environments, and over a period of time, we are constantly burning best practices into it so that you can actually test out not just performance, but overall system availability, system health kind of tests. So because it's just not about how fast we can run in a good environment, what happens when there's failure, what happens when you have to add nodes, how long does it take to remove nodes, and those kinds of things, right? So that's X-ray, and once we obviously invested in building tools to benchmark it, we have to spend a lot of time in terms of actually improving the core performance. In the case of at least the networking bottlenecks versus storage bottlenecks, this is pretty straightforward. What are we doing? And everybody's doing this. You've got NVMe now being burned into the core platform. On top of that, from a networking perspective, we're going to fuse in RDMA natively. And both of these, between NVMe and RDMA improvements, are actually landing up in a new platform that we're going to be launching pretty soon, which is the 9030 platform, which is going to be our flagship high-performance platform, offering 40 gig connectivity, sub-millisecond latencies, all that good stuff that you guys know about. But this is not what I would call the aha of performance from our perspective. Because in the new set of workloads that we constantly see, the bar is being raised. Where the bottleneck is shifting beyond storage, compute, networking to the application, where the virtualization layers are where the bottlenecks happen to be, right? And so from our perspective, if you think about the traditional hypervisors, right, they were built knowing that some of these latencies existed on the storage stack, the network stack, and so forth. What we've had to do, and this is probably the most significant release of AHV since when we came out in terms of feature functions, and we've been adding a bunch of things, is something called as AHV Turbo Mode. It is essentially re-architecting the core AHV fabric to ensure that it completely understands the fact that the storage and network latencies are completely dramatically changed. The faster it can create bypass routes, the faster it can multi-channel queues, so that the app is actually touching the storage and the network queues as quickly as possible. There's a lot of details here. We'll demonstrate a few of the capabilities, but this is going to essentially, with a simple software upgrade, give you a tremendous boost in performance. So that's the performance optimization side. And then finally, of course, we have keeping things on, right, which is probably the most important thing at the end of the day. And here, as many of you guys know, we do sync, async, a whole bunch of stuff. And we're going to demonstrate a few of these things, but in the upcoming release, we will actually introduce something new, which essentially brings you the benefits of synchronous RPOs, near synchronous RPOs, over a high latency WAN. And we're not just doing that from a data protection side, we're also extending that to backup, where especially with AHV, when many of you guys have come to us and said, look, I think it's great for a lot of things, but we really need to get integrated backup going. I'm sure you guys have seen this on the show floor as well. We now have a ton of partners signed up, including Comtrade, including Rubrik, that have built native capabilities inside Prism for backup and so forth. And to sort of give you guys a quick view about all these capabilities, let me introduce Raja on stage. Okay? Come on up, Raja.
Let me quickly just log into my virtual desktop and get things going.
If you, just like my last name, if you ever want to pronounce Raja's last name, just call him M10Y, like I-18N.
Yeah, as I was saying,
okay,
like someone like you, last name jokes are not the way to go.
Yeah, sounds good. You still work for us? Okay. All right. So what are we going to show right now?
So as you're saying, I mean, look, the Nutanix Enterprise Cloud OS, it's a platform for running applications. And there are three things that any platform needs to do. You need to be able to move your applications onto the platform easily. Once they're on it, you got to be able to run them real fast. And then finally, you need to be able to provide them the highest levels of availability. So let's start with the migration bit first, okay? The extract product for databases essentially allows you to move your SQL servers from anywhere onto Nutanix quickly and easily. The tool's workflow, it consists of 4 distinct phases. in the first phase, we'll discover your SQL servers, no matter whether they're running virtualized, bare metal, or in the public cloud. In the next phase, when you go to the design phase, we look at all of the config and the performance profiles of the SQL servers, and we apply a whole slew of design best practices to really optimize the SQL servers for a Nutanix deployment. Then we move on to the actual deployment itself, and then finally, in the last stage, we use SQL replication to migrate the data from the source environment onto the target.
Awesome, man. Let's see it.
So let's bring up the demo on the screen, please. So we are looking at the console for the extract product. So let me just create a project here. We are moving some SQL servers for an HR application. So I create a new project, and the first thing that we'll have to do is to input a set of parameters that describe the source environment. We have made it super simple for you. So you can see this is pretty much all you have to enter to identify the source environment, some IP address, ports, and your user credentials. So let's just go ahead and upload that through the spreadsheet. And once we are done, we'll start the scan here.
So essentially, it's obviously contacting the databases, scanning.
That's right. So you can see now the tool is going and searching for the SQL environments, right? And you can see it's discovered 2 SQL servers. So let's go have a look. The first one you can see is a SQL 2008, and it's running on Windows 2008. And this one has about 3 gigabytes of data. The second one, that's a SQL 2014. This one's running on 2012, and this one has about 62 gigabytes of data. If you flip into the databases tab, the tool shows you a view of the different databases that are within the SQL VM itself. Now that we have discovered the VMs, let's go and generate the design. And you can see the tool came back and recommended 2 SQL Server VMs, and we retained the guest OS as well as the SQL versions. If I get into the detailed look, you can see that the tool is automatically recommending a whole bunch of AOS storage properties, as well as the VM and compute and networking. But most importantly, all of the database disk layouts within the SQL VM. So a lot of stuff that otherwise you'd have to do manually, all taken care of by the tool itself. We then proceed to deploy the VMs, and when we do this, it will ask us for some parameters describing the target environment. And when you do it in your data center, this will take you about 10 minutes or so to deploy the VMs. And depending on the data you have within the SQL environment, minutes to hours to migrate all of the data from the source to the target. So in the interest of time, let me just cut over to how this all looks like when it's all done. So let me just go and find the project. And you can see if I pull up the deployment status, the deployment's all done. And if I go into the detailed view, this is where you can see a lot of steps, all the way from cloning the VMs to laying down the OS disk, to setting SQL Server up, to configuring the right roles, to renumbering the disk.
So basically, we have made what essentially would have been thousands of lines of chef code or something like that, simple, turnkey, and prepackaged it from a migration perspective.
That's exactly right. I mean, the net of all of this is that, look, moving SQL servers from one infrastructure environment to another has always been a painstakingly complex process, taking often days or weeks. And in true Nutanix fashion, we have really focused on the mundane, and we have made that complex task simple, turnkey, one click.
Got it. So what's next?
Well, these applications, right? It's also about performance. So, what do you think? How many IOPS do you think our cluster is driving?
50 million.
Well, let's go.
That was not part of the script, by the way. It's supposed to be 50K IOPS.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. So, if you look into, we have an 8-node cluster, and let's go have a look here. We are doing about 450,000 IOPS. Let me jump into the storage tab.
I think that was supposed to be the surprise, by the way. 450,000 IOPS.
Yes,
that's a lot.
So that is a lot. From an 8-node cluster, we have been able to drive 450,000 IOPS. So let me go and take a look at what's going on. Let's go and see what's driving all of those IOPS. And let's go into the table view here. We typically end up running some Oracle in our .next demos, so let me take a wild guess. And yeah, it's my lucky day. You can see that we are actually running some Oracle VMs, 4 Oracle VMs, and you can see these are big VMs, 44 cores and 240 gig, okay? Let me jump into Oracle Enterprise Manager and look into the view from over there. Let me just quickly.
Is this the GUI that Dheeraj developed?
Yeah, you can see like the difference between Prism and a sort of a modern GUI, and let's wait for Oracle Enterprise Manager to load up.
Thankfully, he hasn't been writing code on Prism anymore.
That's right, that's right. So let's see. So if you go into the rack view here, you can see that we have this like 4 Oracle VMs, they form the cluster. And then if I jump into the summary performance tab, you can see from a IOPS standpoint, we're driving about 450,000 IOPS. And if I cut over to the latency view, you can see all with excellent latency, just about a millisecond of latency.
Got it. So this is a big difference from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who were with us last year at .next in Vegas, we showed you how we run Oracle bare metal using Acropolis block services. And in that environment, we were driving about 80,000 IOPS. And this year, we are running Oracle virtualized in a hyperconverged manner on the cluster, and we have been able to gain a 400% performance improvement.
In a single software update. Oh, that's great. That's great. So obviously, we've done quite a few things here, right? So maybe you can spell them out.
Yeah, it really is a testament to the power of our software-defined architecture, right? We get to, because of our vantage point in the stack, we get to leverage innovations on the storage side. We are using NVMe drives. If you look at the compute, you talked about AHV Turbo. That's what we are using here. And then finally, on the networking side, we are using RDMA to cut down latency as well as increase throughput.
Awesome.
So, if you look at it, to net it all out, when you look at running Oracle, SQL, or other databases on Nutanix, you have complete flexibility. You can run them bare metal, you can run them virtualized, all with best-in-class performance.
So what about the last piece then, right?
Yeah, these applications, they are not about just performance, it's also about protecting them. So let's jump into the data protection tab and see what we have going here, right? And if you go into the table view here, we can see that we have one protection domain that we have configured to protect the Oracle VMs, right? And we used to have 1 hour RPO in our asynchronous replication. And we had said that with our near synchronous replication, we'll bring it down to 15 minutes. I'm very happy to announce that actually, with our near sync technology, we have been able to bring the number down a lot lower. It's now, when we ship the product, it's going to be at 1 minute.
Wow, great. That's how we incent our engineers, is that I told them we can't be on stage for 15 minutes.
So let's go into the schedule here. You can see that it's set to take like snapshots every 15 minutes. If you go into the, you can see the system has been taking snapshots every 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and see if we can, change the schedule and lower it. So let me go into here and let's do the update. All right, so it's...
So there's some, obviously we've done better than 1 minute. That's the surprise.
Yeah. For some applications and use cases already using this technology, we can bring it down to even lower. It's at 15 seconds. So let me go ahead and show you that here. So I set it to 15 seconds, and we save it. And now the cluster will start taking snapshots every 15 seconds.
So maybe you can summarize the impact of something like this.
Yeah, the real reason that this technology is so powerful is that, look, no matter where your data centers are, your primary could be in New York, your secondary is in San Francisco, thousands of miles away, you could still use this near sync technology to give your application the highest levels of availability. Even if your data centers are close by, so that you could do synchronous replication. In many cases for these mission-critical applications, you just can't do that because that would introduce a lot of latency in the I/O path. So this technology, no matter where your data centers are, no matter what your application is, provides you the highest levels of protection.
Got it.
So let's look into what's going on here. You can see already we started here, and the system is starting to take snapshots at every 15 seconds. In fact, the 15-second is lower than the Prism refresh timeout. So if we do a refresh, we'll see some more snapshots in here. Yeah, so there you go. You can see at 15, at 30, at 45, there you have it.
All right, man. Thank you so much, Raja.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you.
Okay, 15-second RPOs. Raja committed for it, so make sure you hold him accountable. All right, so quickly, we've done a lot of good things on the enterprise apps part. When you obviously look at where Nutanix is being used across the data center, across public and private clouds, there's a lot of increasing footprint around Nutanix for Mode 2 applications or developer-friendly applications. And fundamentally, the reason is pretty simple, right? Which is the fact that not only do we need to build enterprise production-grade capabilities around storage, resiliency, scale, and so forth to Pivotal Cloud Foundry or any of these PaaS applications, we also need to provide homogenization across Mode 1 and Mode 2 applications on the same operational fabric. And that's the reason why we've had a lot of success with enterprises now, not only starting on Nutanix with containerization, whether it be Docker-based or Kubernetes-based, but also running full PaaS applications such as Pivotal Cloud Foundry natively integrated into Nutanix, and then taking this form factor that we currently have, whether it be a PaaS fabric from Pivotal or with Red Hat, OpenShift, or third-party open sources, and expanding it to even next-generation AI workloads. In this particular case, TensorFlow, so that we can actually run it with native AHV GPU pass-through. The one final area, though, that I wanted to talk about in terms of these Mode 2 apps is the fact that we launched, in my opinion, one of my favorite, fastest-growing features in the capabilities, Acropolis File Services for consolidating file capabilities natively into the fabric. And since its launch, it's actually taken off dramatically in terms of not just production usage, but the amount of optimizations that we have put into the fabric. And so today, I'm very happy to announce for it to go mainstream as well, so that it covers both traditional CIFS, VDI data, but also machine data, is that it's actually going to come out with native NFS support across the core fabric as well. So essentially, in a nutshell, what are we saying, right? We're saying that, look, this platform now has evolved. In a few years, it's gone from managing virtual machines to now files, containers, and so forth. And when you really look at the architecture, though, increasingly, you will see that the constructs are more and more aligned with, essentially, we started with the EC2 for the enterprise, or the EBS for the enterprise. We extended it to EFS, ECS kind of services, all sharing the same consumption paradigm. And so when we look at this operating system across any application, and we look at this multi-cloud world between core, distributed, and edge, we have to obviously then click into the fact that can we actually have the form factor, can we have the consumption model to support any of these deployments? And we've talked a little bit about the fact that we have this choice of a whole bunch of these options, but it's my great pleasure to actually introduce a strategic partner on stage today for the first time, which is, it's a relationship that has been in the making for a long time, and we've done a lot of exciting things already in terms of truly providing some innovation with IBM. So Brad, where are you? Come on up, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Sunil. Oh, wow.
Brad, every time that I've seen you, you're always in a Hawaiian shirt. Thank you for dressing up, by the way.
You gotta look classy for Nutanix.
Yeah, you gotta look classy for us, man. So tell us a little bit about the relationship.
Oh, man, it's, first of all, even before we talk about the products, I think I've been really excited looking at our development teams working together. We took our Power Platform with your software stack. I think it was 3 weeks. Yeah. 3 weeks the teams were able to knock it out and get that up and running, and we have that on display out in the demo area, that platform up and running, which I thought was a really great thing. So I think that bodes for great things to come as well.
Got it.
As we look into the future, as we look at these two great development teams working.
Yeah, it must be all that free beer that you have in Austin.
No, we don't. No, this is IBM, man. We don't. We come to have beer with you guys.
Got it. So tell us a little bit about the joint offering.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here, right, is we're moving the entire Nutanix stack over to our Power Platform. So we got our Power Platform with the same enterprise processors that we developed and have in our enterprise servers for quite some time. We'll now be running the full automation stack of Nutanix. I think the early results are great. Of course, we'll have the great reliability of Power Systems on there. But, we're seeing performance advantages already, too. We haven't even gotten a lot of tuning done, and we're looking at 18-20% performance advantage on transactional workloads.
Yeah, especially big data workloads and OLTP workloads and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think that is, exciting for us, And then you look a little bit forward into the future, and we got the Power 9 platform coming out, later on this year. I think, you start looking at that, right, and then the I/O innovation that we've been doing on that platform. We got PCIe Gen 4 will be available later this year. And you look at our Open CAPI interface is a really high bandwidth accelerator interface. I think that's going to be able to bring a whole new set of workloads to the hyperconverged platform, because that I/O is going to enable all the enterprise workloads, I think, to run really, really well on a hyperconverged platform. I think that'll be very exciting.
Got it. And tell us a little bit, though. I mean, one of the reasons why we were able to get this product out so quickly was also the fact that you guys had already done some work on KVM, and then we did all this thing so that the full stack actually now runs natively on AHV.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we've done with our Open Power Platform, is bring all of those industry standard Linux, industry standard KVM platforms, all run in a first-class manner on the Power Platform. That certainly, has enabled many clients, especially the Nutanix workload, to port quickly to the platform.
Got it.
But, there's one thing I just wanted to say. You had that IOP chart up there, 320K IOPS. We can go ahead and make next year's chart now. It'll be well over $1 million. Well over $1 million.
All right, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Over $1 million. One node.
Okay. 1 million IOPS on one node. We do need 3 nodes for a cluster, by the way. So we'll take 3 million IOPS.
Fair enough. Okay.
Right.
We'll give you 3.
Thanks, Brad. So remember that. Brad from IBM, 3 million IOPS on a cluster. Raja from Nutanix, 15-second RPOs. Okay? Those are the 2 names. So when we talk about distributed enterprise, let me just keep going through this because we have some more demos here, is the fact that obviously distribution matters from a scale of operations. And one of the biggest things that we have done, and this has taken a lot of work from us, is you no longer need 3 nodes. Right? Only 1 node and 2 nodes work. All right? In the new release, this can be obviously packaged in a variety of form factors. It'll still be centrally managed using Prism. Prism will have one-click upgrades, both from a scheduled perspective as well as a rolling upgrade perspective and all that good stuff, right? So this particular area is not just for remote office branch offices, but also for the next architecture, which is around the edge cloud. And the edge cloud, as I said, it's just not about drones or NUCs and so forth. We've already done that. It's about actual practical deployments of shrinking the form factor while retaining the same operational experience across a variety of these deployments, whether it be on cruise lines, airline terminals. These are all practical things that we've actually been working with customers on, where you can actually package Nutanix software and purpose-built hardware all the way from the edge to the distribution layer, connecting to the core cloud. And there were some interesting stories in the military that we've run into in the last 12 to 18 months that I thought that I'd invite a couple of our friends to come up on stage to talk about them. Chris and John, come on up, man. So before, Chris, we get into it, I see Hercules there dragging something. So what is that? I just told him to ad-lib it, by the way. He may be going over the top. But what? So you didn't get a room? What was I forgot the line, by the way. You didn't get a room at the hotel or something?
I'm sorry?
Did you get a room at the hotel? Is that why you're carrying that luggage?
It's the Gaylord is booked, so I just brought my bag with me.
Okay, got it.
In DC, you don't leave bags unattended.
So what is that? What is that?
This is the Class Telecom Tactical Data Center.
All right, so while he's setting up and showing us how Nutanix with Class can actually give you that edge nodes, maybe, Chris, you can tell us a little bit of a couple of stories. Let's start with the first
So
one.
the first one, recently just returned from a military exercise. I was invited to go along with the government customer.
Can you tell us where?
Okay, I was in Eastern Europe. We'll just put it at
Got
that.
it. That part of the world.
Yeah, that part of the world.
Yeah.
So what the premise was is currently down in Florida, they have a data center that is currently replicating and federating services straight into a tactical data center. So the premise of the exercise is I need enterprise services, though, at the forefront, at the forward operating location that we're going to go deploy to. So what they did was they used the Nutanix software. They started replicating data down in Florida. Within a couple of hours, they were notified that they need to go and deploy to a forward location. So at that point, all they have to do is turn the system off, power it down, put the lids back on it, and it's 45 linear inches, so they were able to take it on any commercial aircraft.
So they flew commercial aircraft.
That's correct. And it meets the size requirements that they could actually put it as a carry-on item on that same aircraft, meaning that I don't have to wait for a day to transport equipment.
Wow. And so what happened?
So then when they finally got to their location, they were replicating data to a virtual data center in Germany. Once they were able to actually get on the ground, they got into everybody knows Eastern Europe, you've got the small compact cars. They had 2 personnel carry the entire system. We're able to get in that car, go to the exercise location, and go ahead and start setting up. The beauty of the system is that it's battery backed inherently in the system. So they were able to power on even without grid power and start getting services back up and running. Cool. So they were able to provide within 2 hours local services for enterprise grade services on the deployed location until the transmission path came in and they were able to start replicating again.
Wow. That's a good story. Do you have it up, John? Up? What does it look like? Where's Prism? I thought you were going to show us some fancy screens. You got it on your phone or something? All right, man.
So essentially just a 4-node cluster made up of Xeon D processors, 128 gigs of RAM per node, and an integrated 10 gig switch that Class Telecom brings to the market. All of these are going through military recognizations, testings, and standards, which gets into the second story. So.
Got it. Actually, before it does, how much, I mean, can I, yeah, I can touch it. I can touch it. So this probably won't pass regulations, right? Man,
Sunil.
that's pretty heavy, actually, right? This guy's, he's, all right, Big John. You can get off the stage now. Right? So what's the second story?
So the second story is Class Telecom designs and develops ruggedized equipment for the DoD or RUF market. With that, there was a story of an airborne operation we did recently where, for some reason, the parachute did not deploy when they pushed the equipment out of the aircraft.
Parachute didn't deploy. I heard this story
Parachute didn't
before.
deploy. So what happened was the chassis itself hit the ground probably 1,200 feet, about 120 plus miles an hour. And actually, they call it
Carrying
a
our
burn-in.
precious software.
Right. They call it a burn-in because it actually impacts and makes a divot in the ground.
It hit the ground.
It
this is
did.
a data, it's a node. or
It did.
tree.
So the bundle that they use wraps it in a little bit of protective material, and then they put it into a bag. That bag has a chute. That chute will deploy, and it makes a graceful landing. I mean, probably about 5 foot per second, right? For that, though, it didn't deploy, meaning that the actual equipment hit the ground at full force.
At 125 miles an hour.
That's correct. So what that stands for on the Class side is that we develop products that aren't meant to withstand that type of treatment. But what it did do was allow the equipment to be able to be recovered from that site. And we did take it back to the safety area, and we're able to power on the battery and the router and switch at the same time without any damage. So the chassis itself contained all that equipment.
Got it. And so it's true edge deployment.
That's
All right.
correct.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you,
Great
Sunil.
job, man.
Appreciate it.
Good story. We asked for some videos, but I guess they were blacked out. So anyway, as we look at those multi-cloud architectures across the core, distributed, and the edge, and we look at this as across any application, any work, any deployment form factors, the key thing, as I mentioned before, it comes down to doing this with optionality. Because in this day and era, every customer that we talk to do not want to replicate the lock-in that they went through for the last couple of decades, right? So if anything, I want to choose the right cloud, I want to choose the right hardware platform, I want to choose the right hypervisor and so forth. So whether it's any platform, any hypervisor, any consumption model, whether it be appliance, software, pay-as-you-go, and finally, as Brad mentioned, any computing architecture as well, as a first-class citizen, right? And this is foundational to the fact that Nutanix is evolving beyond where we started as a form factor that was just a pure play appliance to embracing the full optionality that we need to give to our customers long term as they embrace this journey towards a multi-cloud architecture. So that was the one OS portion, right? Any application, any deployment with an open approach. Let's talk a little bit about one click. It's the experience, which is what differentiates us, frankly, even more so than our data plane. The fact that we've invested so heavily on the control plane is a sense of ownership and pride for us. And there, when we talk about what we have done in terms of building this core IP of a control plane that's single, common, scalable across all three clouds, the first thing that we've done is that everything is now in Prism Central. Prism Central is deployable in one click in the current release, okay? So you can literally see that. We'll demonstrate that when Rajiv shows up on stage. But it's also essentially scale out like our data plane. Because with the kind of volumes of nodes, the number of VMs that we have to support, it has to embrace the same capabilities of scaling out across a variety of requirements, right? And so whatever we have found in Prism Element is now being shaped into Prism Central in that single pane of glass. But it doesn't stop there. Where it's extending, though, is the fact that so far we've always focused on virtualization, compute, and storage in the definition of our single pane of glass. People used to come and tell us, what about the network? And when people would ask me this from time to time and we would talk about it, some customers or some partners would say, well, when are you going to put a switch inside your fabric? Because that's all I need. I need a switch inside my box. And when you really press them, what was the reason? You say, well, I got 8 cables going out. I need to bring it down to 2 cables. And we would give them some money back for the extra 6 cables. But so the real problem, what we found when we talk to our customers and real deployments is not in the data plane. The real problem in convergence and networking, in our opinion, is in the control plane. Because when I deploy something, I'd like to know if something's slow. And if that is slow, not just because of my storage latencies, but because of my packet loss to the top of the rack switch. And so in the current product itself, that's shipping right now, we've started that journey over the last 6 to 12 months where we've built in network visibility as a first-class citizen so that in Prism, you can now have a clean, reasonable, transparent view into what's causing latencies, misconfigured ports, a whole bunch of troubleshooting capabilities around networking is burnt into the product. But we haven't stopped there because that's the first step, visibility. The second step is about provisioning and automation. So when I provision 100 VMs today in Nutanix, we take care of the compute side and the storage side. Now with native integration, it will provision the VLANs on the top of the rack switch. It will update the load balancing rules. It will update the firewall capabilities as well, all within that one-click automation. And we haven't stopped there, because once you do full network automation built into Prism, the next step is about how do you secure my application environment. And there, with Acropolis Hypervisor, upcoming release, you'll have native inbuilt microsegmentation. And we'll demonstrate that, which is a really powerful capability that doesn't require you to actually build virtual network overlays, but you can still, without having to buy expensive overlay fabrics and so forth, as yet another tool with yet another management console. This is very similar to Amazon again. AWS or Google or Azure have concepts such as security groups. You provision 100 VMs, I take 10, put it in a security group. I don't pay anything extra, plus it's simple. That's what native Acropolis microsegmentation is. And this is supported now across a variety of what I would call L3 to L7 partners across firewalls, load balancers, switches, and so forth. And to talk a little bit about the full power of this platform, this control plane, and how they're using it from a small deployment to a very large deployment. Please come up, Jamie, from CenturyLink. All right, so is your mic on?
I think so. I hope so.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, he won't get off stage, by the way. Jamie's one of those guys. So, so tell us a little bit about, CenturyLink. I know you guys have grown a lot across the years with acquisitions, data centers worldwide, and started with Nutanix in a small way and then expanded dramatically.
So basically, one of the key view we are looking at is IT operation execution strategy. So basically, we use Nutanix and help us to pave 3 simple steps toward to the accurate and operation efficient execution strategy. So basically, the first step we're looking at is our people and our resource out there. How can we freeze up people's cycle? So what we do is we actually set Nutanix as our standard offering for our Windows and Linux workload. That's the first step. Once it's in place, all of the new comments and also the existing workload, we can migrate it over. And because we freed up people life cycle, the next step we can do is we have time to tap into innovative projects. That's why we do the Pivotal, Hadoop, and also we are able to run IBM Watson on Nutanix hardware.
He said that, Brad, you paying attention? He said Watson. Said Watson. So anyway, so that's mode 1, mode 2 applications on the same platform.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I know you have this interesting new project called Get the Red Out for looking forward, right? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. Get the Red Out, actually, there is a core purpose that everybody's care about. The objective is production stability and operation efficiency. If you are CTO, CIO, those are your top items. So what we do is with our innovative projects, we are able to set the big data execution strategy to help us identify. Because keep in mind that we are able to run with speed already. So if the speed is high, we don't have accuracy, the disaster is going to be big. That's why we use a big data execution strategy for us to help us to identify and narrow down where are the red zones, how we're going to remediate.
Got it. So you got essentially a 1, 2, 3 plan like you laid out between server, mode 2 applications, and then now analytics and big data and so forth. That sounds pretty comprehensive, right? So what's next?
So the next future is actually interesting because I always tell people, any problems can be solved by money. Those are small problems. However, Nutanix help us to enable and to tap into the area that we can tackle speed. And that is something that is the very unique position that Nutanix has that nobody is able to tap into too much yet. So what I tell people is future is not going to be there waiting for us. Future is actually for the people who get there first. So Nutanix enable us to get there quickly.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So I know we spend a lot of time on automation, especially on the control plane side. A couple of interesting things, though, that actually keeps us going, frankly, is to go beyond automation. I think for us, more and more, we are becoming a big data engine ourselves. I know Dheeraj touched on it a little bit. Essentially, over the last 2 to 3 years, we've made a significant investment in machine learning engineering inside the company. You saw some aspects of that with CrossFit and planning. But essentially, what we're now doing, and a whole lot of functionality is now coming out in the release coming shortly, is the fact that it can auto-suggest, if not auto-correct, a lot of these capabilities around troubleshooting, whether it be cleaning up dead VMs for capacity reasons, whether it is identifying a bully VM and rebalancing VMs in the cluster, or even as needed to add nodes into the cluster on demand based on your requirements at that point, right? But that's only the, if I can call it the bottoms-up view. The other part, and we talked about this, and this is probably the a very significant evolution within the company is to elevate operations from VMs, containers to applications, and that's where Calm comes in. Calm, probably our first strategic product in the company beyond our core offering of Acropolis and Prism, essentially elevates us to focus operations from an app-centric perspective. And you'll see this whether in every demo, every usage and all, every portion of our workflows are now coming top-down from an app-centric perspective, okay? Obviously, we have a very rich marketplace to begin with. We showed a little bit of that yesterday. You'll see that in the conference, plus also on an ongoing basis. This is a living, breathing organism that keeps rapidly changing with third-party apps, partner apps, and so forth. But the core essence, though, of Calm is around essentially creating this transition of what I call, the CIO to the CAO, the Chief Information Officer to the Chief Amazon Officer, or the Azure Officer, or the Alphabet Officer, by the way. Kind of works. Basically, Chief Cloud Officer, right? But I think if you think about it, imagine your CIO going to your business and saying, look, you can go to Amazon or Azure, Google, you can come inside, whatever, but tell us your application workload requirements. What is the SLA? What's the cost? And let the system recommend, based on the right SLA and the right clause for the right workload, the system should be able to say, is it better to be served on Nutanix on-premise or AWS or Google off-premise? And not only is that a one-time decision, which is I can one-click deploy, I should be able to change my mind or over time make things mobile. So I should be able to move workloads over a period of time depending on how the workload working set changes. So imagine the power of what we mean by Calm is, in the evolution of Calm, you'll be able to log into Calm, log into AWS, into that account, it will scrape the AWS usage, it will model the workloads just like it's modeling on-premise, heuristics around usage, costs, and so forth, and it will say, look, here's a workload, this is predictable, this is elastic. Would it make sense to run predictable on Nutanix? This is what it would cost. Do you want to migrate? And do you want to do that in a reverse direction too? I'm running something on-premise, it's running for 2 hours a day, that's what it's analytics. I'm spending 8 nodes to do it. Is it really worth my time? Am I better served running it as a service on Google? So that is the real power of Calm. And to show you sort of, I would say, an end-to-end view of how Prism, Calm, this whole operational control plane is coming together, let me bring Rajiv on stage.
How are you?
You doing okay? You're out of breath? Everything okay?
I thought you were the one out of breath.
Yeah.
You're running a little fast.
I'm getting there. So what are we going to talk about today?
So let's take a look at some upcoming Prism Central features. Prism Central's been evolving into a control plane for all of your data center management, starting from initial provisioning, moving on to day-to-day operations, and even scaling to public cloud. But before we can do any of that, we first have to deploy Prism Central itself. Yeah. And we've made that process really simple. Let me just show you that. So over here, I have Prism Element. It's not been registered to any Prism Central yet. Let's go ahead and do that. I want to deploy a new Prism Central instance. We'll pick a build over here. And now I get a choice. I can either deploy to a single VM Prism Central. That's what we've been supporting so far. But starting with our upcoming releases, we will support scale-out Prism Central. So now I have the option of deploying a Prism Central cluster. So let's go ahead and try that. I pick the number of Prism Central VMs. 3 is good. Select network. Give it an IP address. This one's good. And that's pretty much it. I can, at this point, go ahead and deploy Prism Central. You can see that a task has been created. If I look at the task list over here.
So essentially, in a few minutes, you've essentially got a scale-out control plane.
In a few seconds, you've got it started. It'll take about 4 minutes to complete. But that's how simple it is now to deploy Prism Central.
Got it.
So that's deploying Prism Central. But what about applications? How do we deploy applications on top of Prism Central? And Aditya showed a little bit of this yesterday with the new Calm interface. The marketplace is where we do all of this now. I have a few applications over here. I have, among other things, a Microsoft VDI desktop. I'm going to go ahead and launch that. This is a blueprint built in for VDI. It's got a few parameters to it. But one interesting thing you'll note is that I now have a section for vGPUs.
So who wants AHV vGPU, by the way? I know there's a bunch of folks that are asking for it. So it's coming.
So with AHV supporting vGPU, we can actually bake this into the blueprint, and our Windows desktops can take advantage of vGPU. So let's go ahead and launch that.
Again, the whole workflow, as I mentioned, is now top-down from a COM being fused into Prism as an operational experience.
Yep, I'll give this a name. Go ahead, create the application over here. And now notice one thing I did not do. I did not pick a host for this particular application. Prism Central has a view into all of your data center. It knows what your hardware looks like. And we have a new cloud scheduler that will actually pick the best hardware for a particular workload. In this particular case, since it requires vGPU, it'll pick the right node with a GPU built in. And if I look at that, if I look at the VM over here, we can see that it does have a Tesla M60, NVIDIA Tesla M60 vGPU assigned to it. It's starting on the Darth Vader 14 node. If I look at that, that's a node with two Tesla
So it's AHV vGPU support, the new cloud scheduler built into the core product, but it also looks like our interface has changed.
That's right. So this is a new look that we are experimenting with for Prism Central. The tabs across the top are gone. We now have a hamburger menu, which lets us have a more scalable visual design, put more entities over here. And it's also fully integrated with search. We can navigate using the search bar instead of the menu, and we'll see some of that as we go along.
Cool.
So we now have this VM up and running. And of course, GPU support in the modern day and age for Windows 10 and for most modern applications is very, very useful. Most of them use 3D acceleration extensively. I have a little demo over here using a virtual tour of the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Hope some of you got a chance to see that today. If not, maybe we're getting a quick look over here.
So this is actually vGPU rendering on the server side.
Right.
Using
this
AHV.
is over the network, so some of the slowness here is more due to the network than the vGPU. So pretty cool. Even on a virtual desktop, we can do 3D graphics. Okay, so now that's provisioning. What about day-to-day operations? And one of the most complex tasks that IT admins...
What about the decoupling PC, by the way? I have that screen on. You got to.
Oh, you still have that. Yeah, so one of the things we are doing going forward, we have a lot of new capabilities coming in Prism Central. We want to get them to you as quickly as possible. So going forward, we're going to release Prism Central on its own release train. So it's going to iterate faster than normal AOS releases. You'll be able to get new functionality in a very quick way. But still, we will align with the normal AOS releases so that if you do want to keep the one-stack upgrade experience going, you can still have that as well. But you have the option of consuming at a faster pace.
Sounds good.
Great. So let's look at some of the more complex tasks that IT admins have to do. And one of them is troubleshooting performance issues. So let me search for slow VMs. And you can see right in the search bar, I can see an alert for an Oracle VM that's been running slow. There's an alert over there. I can click on that. And here you'll see something new again. I have a graph here showing how the system's been monitoring I/O latency for a while. But in addition, I have this light blue band, and that is a graph of expected performance, what the system thinks normal I/O latency should look like. And we get an alert when latencies exceed the system's predicted value. This means that you no longer have to set static thresholds on latencies yourself. You don't have to go to each VM, say this is what normal behavior would look like. Let me set a threshold. The system will figure that out automatically for you. We also have a couple of possible causes over here. We have a bully VM that's been running on the same node. We also have some high CPU for the particular host that we're running on. I can analyze this further. I get a nice heat map showing that Apache O2, that particular VM, has actually been using a lot of IOPS on the node. But then the question is...
And this is a new view completely.
These are all new views, right? Yeah. Now, you said that we automatically rebalance bully VMs. So why have we not done that in this case? The system's actually been able to give us a reason for that also. It's not able to migrate the VM because there's a host affinity policy. There's a policy that we've configured that's keeping these VMs on the same node.
I see. So let's explain this because this is very important. We've actually essentially built in auto-triaging and root cause analysis, right, inside the system.
Right, all the way from the effect. We went from an effect, we figured out what the cause is. From that, we actually went all the way down to the policy that's causing that particular effect. So a lot of intelligence built into the system. You'll see a lot more of this going forward as well. Let's take a look at one more new workflow that we have. It's on the planning screens. So let's do planning for this cluster. This is a view that many of you are familiar with. It's our resource runway chart, and it shows what runways will look like for various components based on our system predictions. But I also have a new workflow here for optimizing resources. What this is doing is using the same machine intelligence algorithms that we built in to look for waste in your system. So I have 11 over-provisioned VMs. These are VMs that have been provisioned with more CPU memory or storage than they've been using. I also have 19 inactive VMs that have not been used for a very long time. So here's my opportunity to get some resources back. I might want to send a report to the owners of these VMs showing that, hey, look, you guys haven't been using your resources. Can you give some of this back? And I get a nice report summary with the resource runways for CPU, for memory, for storage, but also a table of my inactive VMs and my over-provisioned VMs. I can just email this off to the owners, and I'll be all set. So even after we have optimized all our resources, though, there'll be times when we just want more. We need more capacity than we have.
Or extend into the public cloud.
Right. So one of the things that Aditya showed yesterday is how we can use the public cloud as an extension of our data center by provisioning applications over there. But he skipped over one step. We never talked about how the networks will be connected. How do you connect your private data center to the public cloud? And if you do this in the traditional way, it's fairly complex, right? You set up a VPN, you punch a hole in the border firewall, you go through testing, you go through...
Or even use Direct Connect or...
Direct Connect's expensive, but yeah, that could be one option. But all of these take weeks, if not months, to set up. What we did was we built some technology. We partnered with a company called Aviatrix, one of our partners over here, and made this really simple. Let me show you. So in the marketplace, I have the Aviatrix application. I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Do print over here. Just go launch that. Give it a name. It's called AVI demo. You'll see I've given a few parameters over here. I've given it my credentials for Amazon. So this is going to set up a connection between my private data center and AWS. It has my credentials there. And it has the number of VPCs I want to create, virtual private clouds I want to create in Amazon. Let's go ahead and create that. Now, this takes a few minutes. This takes about 4 minutes. So I'm going to do the cooking show thing, and I'm going to go to an already deployed application that I have. And that is the AVI demo one over here, or actually the Aviatrix final app here, which has already been deployed. Go ahead and manage that. Launch this over here. And over here, I'd give it which region I want the gateway to connect to, so US West in this case. And I also give it the actual network that I want to extend into cloud. So I have 10.4.124.0/26. I run that. Again, this will take a few minutes, but at the end of this, I will have done everything it needs to connect to the clouds.
Right now, without touching a firewall or any of those rules or a border router, so forth, you're creating a just-in-time virtual overlay network to your particular VPC that you can bring up on demand, bring down, or scale out.
Exactly. So in minutes, you have full connectivity between private and public cloud. When you do that, you can go to the AWS console. You can see the Aviatrix gateway over there. And I also have an application I've been playing with on the side, my seafood beta application. And as you can see, this particular application has a private IP. This is an IP that exists only in Amazon. And I should now be able to connect to it using just from my data center by just using that IP address. And you can see the application comes up.
Got it. I still don't get this joke, but it's OK.
Seafood.
Keep
You
going.
don't see Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I don't watch that.
Okay. You should watch Silicon
All right.
Valley. Great show. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's talk about security. Obviously, we've talked about segmentation. Why don't we take a look at that?
Yeah, security is pretty topical right now, with, especially this week with GoldenEye going around the world. And one of the major issues with malware these days is lateral spread. Malware affects one VM in a cluster, in a data center. From there, it starts spreading to the rest of the network. And microsegmentation helps us protect against that kind of lateral spread. Let's take a look at that. I go to my security policies over here. I've set up a few security policies already.
Again, this is all part of the new microsegmentation feature.
Exactly. I'm going to just pick one of these policies to show how this works. A few things to note. This particular policy is in monitoring mode, so nothing's being enforced right now. The system is being monitored to what flows look like. I have some lines here in blue. These shows policies I configured earlier for monitoring. So I have my application. It's a classical 3-tier architecture of the web server, middleware, and a database. There are some flows between these tiers which are allowed. But there's also a NetScaler load balancer that can connect to the web tier. I've configured all this. What I also have is these lines in yellow. These are flows that the system has detected coming into the application that I neglected to provision, that I neglected to set up policies for. So essentially, there's a corporate health check application that's doing periodic probes to all of my components. Now let's simulate an actual hack into this. Let's simulate an attack. I have a tool over here that essentially uses the most common passwords. There's a brute force password attack against the database. So it's going to take the 1,000 most common passwords, apply them against the database that I have. Go back over here, and you should see that we now detect a new flow. So we're detecting.
So essentially, there was obviously an attack, but in this case, it could be anything new connecting automatically gets monitored and made.
Exactly. One of the biggest problems with microsegmentation is understanding the flows in your system. So this, by detecting them, by bringing them up in this very nice graphical view, we can show you what your network looks like, and then you can make informed decisions about which flows to allow, which ones not to. So in this particular case, I probably want to allow the health check. I want to deny this hack over here. And now I want to switch from monitoring mode to enforcement mode. So let me apply the policy.
You should in real time make those policies.
Yeah, so we set up the policy now, and you should see that this password hack should stop.
Right.
Stop.
And
yep, you can see
wow,
timeout.
It actually worked. All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Richie. So microsegmentation obviously has been baked into our product for a while now. It's coming out in the upcoming release. We're pretty psyched about it, so that literally now you can converge both networking, compute storage, virtualization all in one simple stack. So as we look beyond this and we look at, okay, so one more thing. We talked about elevating ourselves into the application-centric automation side, bringing clouds together, and so forth. The part that I think, and Dheeraj touched on this a little bit, is about how do we actually sort of finish the journey in terms of solving for all of your requirements across public, private, but also a couple of new requirements that we've seen over the last few years. And that's with the introduction of Xi, right? And so what does that mean? So just so that everybody understands the why, is what we're seeing increasingly is that as you do private data centers, public AZs, you're obviously going to make a choice. You're going to choose enterprise apps, let's call them Mode 1 apps. You're going to choose cloud-native apps, let's call them Mode 2 apps. And you're going to choose which cloud they're going to go to, using CAM or otherwise, right? And when you deploy those apps, traditionally you deploy many Mode 1 apps and some Mode 2 apps on-prem. Mostly it's cloud-native on the public side. And as you go through that journey, the #1 consumption of public cloud, other than unless you're an Uber or somebody else, comes from lift and shift, right? Because your cloud-native apps that you're refactoring or moving to the cloud, maybe it's a percentage or two, but most of the real adoption is happening when I'm lifting and shifting my enterprise apps, right? And that increasingly, as most folks are getting to find out, over the first year or two, is becoming a big pain. Because it is different tooling, different economics, call support, call public cloud support versus your own support, right? It's a different operating model. And therein lies the opportunity that was presented to us, is that what if we could help? What if we could help enterprises move to the public cloud, but preserve the tooling, preserve the economics, preserve the SLAs, and that's the foundational reason for Xi, which is about while you can use AWS, Google, and Azure for your next generation applications, build it out, could I actually accelerate move to the public cloud as a service while retaining the same tooling that I've come to learn and love on, say, Prism on-premise? And so that's the sort of like the spirit behind Xi, is the fact that you can now extend your data center your full stack that you're building on your data centers, moving your VMs or containers, gets replicated into the cloud service from Nutanix and provides you the same operational constructs so that lift and shift per se is no different now than moving between one cluster to another. It should be as simple as that. And that's the goal for us for Xi, is just like you would go from migrating your workloads from one cluster to another, or cluster expands on demand, we need to make Xi look like a seamless extension of your data center across the network, the data path, and the control path. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing with Xi is the fact that it needs to have exactly the same kind of operations. We can't, sort of like have disjointed operations. That's the point of having convergence across hybrid clouds, right? And therein, again, the operational fabric for Xi is an extension of your Prism infrastructure that we'll demonstrate. And then finally, when we look at the types of services that you'll consume, these can't be services that are just random, right? These have to sort of feel like they're a natural one-click example. And the biggest use case that we are starting with, from our perspective, the biggest need that folks have come to us with is DR. And increasingly, folks have come to us and said, look, there's two types of customers, right? One is I'm a mid-market customer. I have no DR. I only do backup. And you'll be surprised how many people do that. And then there's the enterprise customers who say, look, I'm investing in a lot of secondary data centers. I've got all this stuff. It takes me 3 months to do DR. And I still am not sure when DR actually happens whether it's going to work. It takes me 3-4 months to do a test. I'm not really feeling good about my DR. Who actually looks forward to a DR event, by the way? Nobody, right? So that's the premise of Xi's first service, is the fact that you shouldn't have to worry about your secondary data centers going forward. It may not happen next month, but over the next few years, frankly, you should be out of the secondary data center business. The more you replatform your primary on Nutanix, single fabric, we should burn in services that extend your data center into the cloud, such as DR. And the way to internalize this is as follows, right? I mean, this is probably the clearest way that one can think about Xi is, we all compare ourselves inspirationally to Apple. It is a full stack product, like Nutanix. Like Nutanix, we take delight seriously. Like Nutanix, in the Apple form factor, iOS is really the core behind all the capabilities that it provides. But along the way, while it provided an app store and you could deploy apps like Calm, along the way, over time, it said, well, I can use Google, I can use this, I can use Dropbox and so forth. But over time, I said, I don't need an app. I just go to settings and I check once and I have iCloud burnt in. That is how we envision Xi to evolve, is that it's essentially, for all purposes, taking the full stack that you have, and the fact that you have retrofitted your services onto this full stack of Nutanix allows us to provide a genuine cloud offering that's an exact replica without you having to worry about lift and shift or complicated operation capabilities. And to talk about how simple we have made this, because that is the real power, is to really see whether we can pull off one-click DR. Let's bring on Benny for the last demo.
Hey, Sunil.
All right, Benny. So let's get into it.
Yep. Let me bring up the demo here. All right. So today I would like to show how we're going to bring Xi Cloud Services to all our customers in a beautiful and delightful manner that you were talking about. So let me act like an IT admin of a company called Waldot. And here you can see I have my Calm marketplace. Using this, I've created a blueprint for my HR app. Right? So let me look at what VMs are there for my HR app. Here you can see I have 5 VMs. And there's a notion of categories that we've introduced. This is tags that you can apply on your VMs. So here you can see I have app type Oracle DB. This is my DB tier for my VM. And then I have employee payroll, which is the web tier of my VM. Right? So here are my 5 VMs. I've tested it out. And now I'm ready to put it in production. Now, one of the first things I think about is disaster. What happens if things go south? The first thing when you think about DR is, OK, I need another data center, as you were talking about. So let me look at some of the new constructs that we've introduced here. With Xi, there's a concept of availability zone. And that means it's a self-managing infrastructure domain. That's a fault domain. And traditionally, you would treat your data center as an availability zone. You see, I have only one data center. So now, let's show the beauty of Xi. How does it help you in getting another data center? So I can go here and add my Xi account. Now, essentially, it asks me to log into my Nutanix. This is my existing Nutanix account at my.nutanix.com. I'll use my test account, benigilwall.com. So here I'm logging in into Xi using my existing account. And what it is doing is it is giving my on-premises Prism Central authority to go use my account in Xi. And that's
so it's been paired as an availability zone almost, right?
Yeah, in fact, not one, but two availability zones are showing up. So this is two real availability zones, one on East Coast, one on West Coast, and that are available for me to go consume. So this is a hybrid view where now I have public and private coming together in one management plane. But the hybrid goes deeper than just the management plane. We have a new concept called virtual networks. This allows portability of my subnets and IP addresses from on-premises to the cloud, so my applications can move over and DR without IP changes. There's also a few new constructs on data recovery and how the data plane is fused together between private and public. Here you see the first thing is a protection rule. Now, whenever I have an app that I need to protect, this is what you do. Right? So you create a protection rule.
And by the way, while Benny is typing this up, what you'll notice is as part of delivering a native cloud service, it is continuing to keep us honest to actually take that same capability, such as, we got to write log file parsing now, we got to do multi-tenancy from the ground up, we got to keep things simple from how to operate it as an operator ourselves. But from a code line perspective, something all of you guys should know is that it's going to be the exact same code line for Xi or for NX. So that if you don't want to use Xi, but you want to use the capabilities of one-click DR across your own data centers, all these capabilities that Benny is going to talk about will flow into the current product.
Yep. So here I've defined a platinum protection rule. I have put the source and destination availability zone that I want to use, RPO, how many snapshots I want to retain at what side. And here's an interesting part, what does it apply to? So I can pick VMs by name, that's the traditional way, or I can say, let me filter the VMs that I want to apply the platinum policy to. So app types, all the apps that are Oracle, DB, and Employee Payroll, these are the two tiers I have, and I click Add, and I save. So that's all I need to do to protect my application. What happens is now it knows the replication schedule. It's actually seeding right now to Xi. It takes some time. And it'll make sure that the recovery points are available on the other side. So instead of waiting for the seeding to happen, let me cut over to my production environment here. As you can see, this also has the Xi availability zones included in the cloud. And I have my recovery points here. Now, this has been running for, we started this yesterday, so this has been replicating to the cloud. So now let's go to Xi, right? And I'll show you how these recovery points appear on Xi. So I'm right now going to log in to the Xi Cloud Services. This time I'll use my production account. And the first thing that you'll see in Xi is a dashboard. This dashboard gives you a clean view of what is your cost so far. As you can see, the current bill is $206. We were doing a lot of testing on Monday and Tuesday and a little bit on Wednesday. We were doing DR testing quite a lot. There are no applications right now running there because I'm only using it as a DR target. Let me explore, go to the Explore view. This is very similar to what you have in Prism Central on premises, except you don't see the hypervisor. You don't have to touch the hardware. All of that is hidden. What you look at is your virtual resources. Again, the availability zones are there, the same availability zones, wall.dc, this is my data center. Here you can see the recovery points. They are there, right?
Got it.
So now supposing there is an unfortunate incident, either your data center is down or my app is down. It was compromised or somebody made a mistake. Let us quickly do a failover, right? Traditionally, this is a hard problem.
Got it. Once we set up the recovery plans and everything, what we're trying to do is to actually simulate a failover event so that we can actually see what's happening, right?
Right. So all I did was just click one button. It had a confirmation, this is the availability zone where you want to fail over, and just click. And the runbook that we had created for this, where we specified, let me show you how the runbook was created. I can click on update here. And this is the runbook that we had created. Essentially, it is saying that you can create the layers of your application and what order they need to be booted up. There are many functionalities here. You can say that I can add a script, I can add a delay, and so on. This gives you capability just like VMware SRM. It's very simple. Right now, it's actually running. Let's go here. You'll see that the failover runbook has been issued, and there are some tests that we had already run in the past, right? Let's look at the tasks and how they are doing. Right now, while we were waiting, it's actually already done. Essentially, it verified the runbook. It created a subnet for your IP addresses to be ported to the cloud. And in the VMs, it says it's all recovered. So let's go and look at the VM screen here, right? Let it refresh. And there you go.
So that's one-click failover, literally, that is brought into the Xi availability zone, right? Let's do one more thing before you guys take a bathroom break.
Right. And don't worry about your sessions because we're still here.
Yeah, that's right.
So now I'm running on Xi and I have to add another VM. For example, I'm comfortable running on Xi, so let me expand my HR app itself. So I'm picking the disk image that I have, and let me give it a name, HR app. If I can type web VM4. There you go.
Could you make it a little longer?
No, I'm an IT admin. That's what I like. So, and production subnet and categories. This is the powerful concept. Employee payroll. That's all I need to do, and hit save.
Got it.
Now I'm provisioning an application VM in the cloud.
So essentially, under the guise of DR, remember we've done all the heavy lifting. This isn't backup. It's a full-blown primary data center environment that you can now continue to use as your IaaS infrastructure in the cloud.
Yep. And as you see, I can see the console as it is booting up in the cloud. And very few cloud providers actually give us this seamless experience like you have on premises in the cloud as well.
Got it. And so one more thing, though, which is obviously, it's a true cloud service. You want to clap? You can clap. Yeah. So we had to build failover natively in such a way that it's bidirectional. And so to really show some failback, let's see if we can actually in real time solve that problem.
So in fact, it's not about cloud-ready apps. It's really about app-ready clouds, right? And what Xi is doing is it's actually welcoming all applications, traditional or modern, into the cloud without asking the apps to change. And that's what we have shown here. And your tooling, the way you debug your VMs and all that remains the same. Okay. Right? So now let's look at this VM. And as you can see, the protection rule Platinum is already applied. If you go to the recovery points and I refresh that view, here you can see. So now what's doing, the system already knows that it has to revert, replicate back.
Basically, notice that the primary data center is back up, and it's obviously setting up replication the other way.
So now let's log into the primary data center where, as we wait for it to boot up. And we'll see quickly if the replication point, the recovery point is already there. So let's go there. And you see it's already there, and that's because it was built from an image that was already seeded on both sides. It's very quickly there.
And you can look at this in a hybrid view and so forth.
Yeah. So right now, let me do the other action, which is the Xi cloud is not Hotel California, right? You can also check out and you can leave whenever you want. So here, for that, there's one button. It's called failback. So same thing. It'll ask confirmation for direction. You click failback, and that's all you need to do. You can go to the VMs view here, and as we wait for the failback to happen, let me talk about this hybrid view, right? So this hybrid view, I'm showing my availability zone on premises, and this is the Xi view. As you can see, all the 6 VMs are there.
And you can see billing and everything else?
Yeah, so there's integrated billing here as well. You can click on billing, and here you can see, this was the cost of using Xi. And there's accounts. We have a one-click ADFS integration. As an admin, I can invite users and so on. Let's go back to the view that I have here. As you can see, VMs are already coming back and failing back.
Got it. So this is one-click DR, failover, and failback.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Binny.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
Yep.
So as you can imagine, guys, this Xi is obviously a pretty company-making initiative. As Neeraj mentioned, it's about reinventing ourselves, disrupting ourselves ahead of what our customer needs and so forth. So when you look at this full picture, right, this is where our strategic partner Google comes in. Is as we were building Xi and as we were looking at this as our native cloud services, it became obvious that one of the biggest things that enterprises need is the fact that I need to be able to take this infrastructure, not just make it available at scale, globally in all the regional capabilities as well, but dark fiber, low latency, and so forth. But it also needed a single solution that can be consumed by enterprises for both enterprise apps and cloud-native apps fused together into a single platform. So that's what we're going to be doing there, is essentially that when you're running your databases, your warehouse management systems on Xi that you've replicated over, remember the full stack is there, so you can actually take BigQuery or any of the GCP services on the same network, the same data path. You can connect them as if you were running one single environment. And that, in our opinion, is a true game changer from the way that public cloud will be consumed, where not just net new cloud native apps, but existing enterprise apps are moved to the public cloud without any lift and shift. So to wrap things up at a high level, right? So we talked about this Enterprise Cloud OS. It's clearly, a big, evolution for us to actually deliver this as a software-centric approach across a variety of partnerships, all the way from public cloud to mainstream enterprises, and also at the same time keep disrupting ourselves in terms of the form factor and the capabilities between appliances to software to services. And we talked about a lot of things today. Right? We talked about COM, we talked about Google Cloud, we talked about micro-segmentation, we talked about our partnership with IBM. We talked about many things. And if you think about it, as a company that's still growing, it's growing pretty rapidly, velocity of product innovations is a top-of-mind thing. You've seen this over the last few years. It's continued this year between 5.0, with all the hardware part, the platform pieces, the software pieces coming out, including Obelix with 5.5 shipping soon. But the biggest thing that keeps us up and that keeps us going is the fact that we've been able to balance velocity with quality, though, right? And just to give you a data point, one data point, actually two. One is the fact that we keep this on our dashboards every day. Every engineering department, support department has this. As the number of nodes have changed, and they've grown rapidly, we take number of customer-found defects as a percentage of node ship, and we measure that line. In mainstream enterprise products, being less than 3-4% is world-class. And we've sort of consistently tried to keep it below 2%. That's one big example of quality. The other big example that we've always talked about, there's like a few QA engineers here, so they'll appreciate it. The other big thing that we've talked about is the fact that, look, we have the world's best support, period. Who agrees with me on that? Right? So it's a combination of support, quality, that we think drives this machine. It drives us to continuously, sort of impress you guys, bring that delight to you folks, spend more time at the bar versus in the data center. A combination of all things that lead us to this conference, for example, being all about you guys. But I'd like to take a small piece of time for us to also thank a bunch of folks that are not here. These are the invisible guys, your favorite SRE, your favorite SC engineer. Who wants to give a round of applause for your SC or SREs? So thank you again. I know it's been a long session. I hope it was informative. I know there's a lot of deeper sessions on Xi, Acropolis File Services, on vNuma, on AHV, and so forth. We'll find you guys later at the bar. Drinks are on me again.